Hello guys, this is Panzer36, and today's video is going to be a little bit of a, not exactly a kit review, but not really a product review either, because you have to at least build them. These are Kaizen workable tracks, and they make a whole bunch of these. They make obviously like Panzer ones, they make I think some Sherman ones, T-34 ones, and so on. And I built, as you can see, two sets here. I built these ones a little while ago, the Winterketten, and I've just recently done the Winterketten, which are very similar. And they basically go together the same way. And I'm very impressed with these tracks, and I think that they're a great option. They're not that expensive. As you can see here, they cost me about $30, which is about half as much as I pay for metal tracks. It's 30 Canadian dollars, so it's about like what 24 US dollars. And I think they are very awesome. They look great. They actually they're workable, of course. And these types of tracks here, which are quite wide, they actually have enough weight that they will sag naturally on the tank. The narrower ones, the standard Panzer III style ones, are a little bit lighter, I've heard, Panzer III 4 ones. So they don't really sag on their own. You have to give them a little bit of a push with your knife or something like that, but they'll stay where you put them. So I figured that I would give you guys a little bit of a kind of like a summary of my thoughts, which I guess I've already kind of done. And I'll show you inside the box, show you what you get, and I'll put together a couple of the Winterketten for you to finish off our SIG 33 here. So the box that the tracks come in, on the front actually just contains the instructions, which are pretty straightforward. You just basically cut them off the sprue, clean them up, put the pins in, and they also show you how to clean up the ice cleats here. And we'll go through this when I assemble a couple for you guys later. Just a couple of shots of them on a Tamiya Stug 3, I guess. On this side of the box here, they have just a couple of features. I guess they say that they can contain this many tracks, which is true. There's 220, which is definitely enough for a Panzer 3 or 4, because the Panzer 4 uses about 99 per side, and a Panzer 3 uses about 95 per side. So you have about 20 to 30 extra tracks left over for spare tracks on the front of the tank or something like that. When I did the Winterketten on my Stug 3, or I guess it was a Sturmhaubize, I had enough Winterketten to do both lengths of track and add some spares on the front as armor, and then also some on the rear as well. They also mentioned that you have 110 of the ice cleats here, which is enough for one in every 2 tracks to have one. And you also contain a bunch of the metal pins here. These ones contain 28. The Winterketten has 38 because the tracks are wider, so of course you're going to use more pin material. Though I've actually probably only used maybe 15 of the pins in this one, maybe even less than that. So I've got a whole bunch left over. The actual box itself is pretty sturdy. Opens up quite nicely, and inside you have all your sprues, which are actually contained in a couple of bags when you don't have the thing already built. And you also have your metal pins in there as well. So here's one of the little sprues you get. As you can see, 4 tracks on there, and this one also comes with the ice cleats on the top. The attachment points on the I guess the tracks there. There's quite a few of them, but if you can see, they're very, very small. They're like basically the smallest attachment points I've ever had on anything ever. And they're really easy to clean up, and also, as you can see, they're on the edges. So you don't really have to get in any tight areas. You just kind of take your sanding stick, and I'll show you in a minute because I'm going to clean up some of these and put the pins in them as a demonstration. And for comparison, the Winterketten here are basically the same thing. The only difference is the other attachment point is also to the end instead of being to the side. And you also don't have any ice cleats on the Winterketten because they're just Winterketten. So let's clean up and put together a couple of these tracks here. I'm just going to do some of the Winterketten. And as usual, I've got my Tamiya 123 cutters, which are very good. And I just basically cut them as close as I can get. Nothing too fancy. No, just like you're cleaning up some parts for a kit, basically. So as you can see, there's still a little bit of a, I guess, a nub mark on all the ends of the tracks here. Also on the back as well, and also on the end. So I just take my standard metal file, which I prefer to sanding sticks because it goes much quicker. You can also use a knife for this, but really it's just, you know, that much work. And there you go, that's gone, and the same thing for the ends. And you don't have to be too perfect with these. I mean, you want to get rid of the nub, otherwise it's going to interfere with the, I guess, the workability of the tracks a little bit, because that's where they go together. But I mean, you don't have to be too perfect in how smooth it is, or if you do a little bit of kind of a messy filing job, because these are tracks. These areas kind of go together, you can't really see them in the end, and also you're going to put some dirt on there, so you know it's not going to be too much of a problem. So there we go. As you can see, it's all cleaned up. It took me about 20 seconds. I was talking at the same time as well, so I just put a YouTube video on in the background and listened to Ian from Forgotten Weapons or something like that talk about something for a couple hours, and I go through an entire bunch of tracks. And it takes basically no time at all. I guess you could say that magic tracks and dragon kits are faster because they're come cleaned up. But if you do Panzer 3-4 magic tracks, there's always pin marks on the other side of the guide horn. So I have to get my narrow file, wherever it is. Here we go. And get in there and sand them anyways. And it takes the same amount of time basically, and it's actually a little bit trickier to get in there and sand that smooth without damaging the other side details. That's actually harder, I find, than just going over the edges because it's nice and flat there anyways. Now with our tracks cleaned up, as per the instructions on the front of the box, we have to take off one of the Mittelstollen here, the ice cleats. And to do that, they tell you to actually just basically cut off the kind of the squared off sections and just get in there with the actual angled piece like this. And so I just do that on the sprue because it's faster than cutting it off and then cutting it again. And I don't do any cleanup on that because it's actually kind of sunken down inside the track itself. In the box we also have a bunch of these metal pins. They say 28 or 38 depending on which one, because you'll need more for the Winterketten because they're longer. And they're it's actually like quite thick. Like it's a lot thicker than the kind of like the flimsy brass, almost like a wire you get with the Friel tracks, which I've done before as well. And I just basically take one out. As you can see, they're pretty hefty. They don't really flex on their own. They're pretty strong. You might be able to even use these for like antenna or something like that because you definitely have a whole bunch left over when you're done. And the way I've been cutting my track pins to length is I've just been basically lining it up about like that. I take my X-Acto knife and I just kind of cut it a little bit shorter. And then I just cut it, make sure it doesn't fly away. And there we go, we've got our own little track pin right here. And so I'll cut off a couple more and we will continue on. Now to put our tracks together, I've got a couple here together for us so far. As you can see, they're already pre-drilled with holes on one end, which is always the inside edge that faces the tank on both the Panzer, I guess the Winterketten and the Winterketten here. And they're already pre-drilled all the way through. I haven't had to do any cleanup on any of these tracks so far. They're very well molded. And so I line them up with my hands. You can make a jig if this is a little bit tricky for you, but I find it's easiest just to do it like this. Hold them together. And I take one of the track pins I've got over here. And if you find the track pins are falling out, which sometimes happens, you can also just give them a little bit of a bend. Just something like that. As you can see, I don't know if you can even see how much I bent that, but it's a little bit curved kind of in the middle there. And just something like that is enough to keep it from falling out. Just a slight bend. And I just kind of stick them in here. I've been using my hobby knife to hammer them in because I don't want to stab it into my finger or anything like that. I just poke them in a little bit more at the end of the hobby knife. And there we go. To put on the ice cleats, I'm actually just been gluing them on with extra thin cement, being very careful to just only get glue where they attach and not between the links. And as you can see, I have them actually at an interval with 1 track gaps between the ice cleats. I've seen it with 1 track gaps, I've seen it with 2 track gaps, and I've seen it with 3 track gaps. And you can also see these very frequently on standard Panzer 3-4 tracks as well. So if you go with a much wider gap than I have, you'll definitely have enough for an extra run, I guess, because they give you 220 tracks and they give you 110 ice cleats. So that's enough to do it the way I'm doing it here. And of course, if you did a 3-track gap, you would be using half as many as I am, so you'd have a whole another set of ice cleats to go on another set of tracks if you want to. So I'm just using my good old Tammy extra thin cement. And I just kind of bend the tracks down like this to get them kind of separated from each other, I guess you could say. And I brush a little bit in the kind of
holes, I guess. I don't know what you call them, but like the little
indentations in the tracks here. And then we just pop our ice cleat in there. And I push it into place. And it's as easy as that.
So my length of track here, which is 10 tracks, is
actually very workable. It can almost
going around in a circle both ways actually.
And they're very
kind of like fluid. They'll sag on their own, of course, because they're not exactly light because they're pretty large and they're plastic. But the metal pins definitely don't have too much friction, and they just kind of
flop around on their own. And on the Panzer 3 I was showing you earlier here, I've actually glued them in place, which sounds kind of weird. Why would you buy workable tracks and glue them? Well, I kind of wanted to demonstrate in the weathering video I'm going to do on this one, the method of having your wheels glued to the tracks and doing it as one component. Kind of like popping the whole thing off like that. But the way they actually sit right now, I basically put them on, they sag naturally to this position, and then I just hit them with some glue. So in real life they would be, if they weren't glued, they would be flopping down the middle here a little bit because they work on their own.
But as you can see, they take on a very nice
and realistic sagging position because that's kind of what they do on their own. You also notice that I broke off a couple of the kind of like the blades of the the wider winter tracks here. That's something that you can often see in photos, so I just did that to a couple of the links to add some interest to the tank. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video and are interested in these tracks. I do definitely recommend them, especially the ones I've tried here. I have not tried any of the other types. I know they make Sherman ones, which look great, but they're kind of complicated. In fact, there's many parts to put together. And the T-34 ones are very similar to these. I know that I believe Scale Model Alberta put up a review of those, and he seemed to think they were kind of alright, but they seem to have a tendency to almost kind of like bow out lengthwise, because the pins kind of all went in one direction. They kind of slowly started to curve, so that might be a little bit of an issue. I didn't try them. When I saw that, I thought maybe the wheels, when you slide them in, obviously the wheels might kind of help to straighten it out. Not sure about that. I do plan to try some of the T-34 with, especially because I do lots of Russian armor along with my German stuff. So when I do get those, I will do a review on them. But as for right now, I'm basically just saying that the Panzer 3-4 types, the standard types they make, which are basically the same as these, the Winterketten and the Winterketten, are very good, and I would recommend them. I mean, $31 it's kind of expensive, but I live in Canada, everything's expensive here for modeling, so if you can get them for a better price somewhere else, I probably assume you can. If you get them for a much better price than Fruels, then definitely go for them. They work really well, they're really easy to put together, minimal cleanup, and they're well designed. So there's never like a difficult cleanup to do, or any really like drilling out of the pins, because they're always really well molded. And I haven't had any issues so far of having to just having issues feeding the pins in, because it always goes nice and smoothly. And like I was saying, the only real issue I had was the pin sometimes falling out, so it would give them a slight bend, and then the pins a slight bend, and that will give them enough kind of springiness that they will hold in place well. So thank you for watching very much. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you learned something new about these tracks. I definitely recommend them, like I've already said. And I hope you guys are a little interested in them. I'm not being paid to say good things about this. No, I'm not. I bought these tracks myself. I never get paid to say anything. Don't make money off this for sure. Not a profit. But what helps me is definitely you guys supporting me on Patreon. Gary Wayne Bradford, Stephen Eldridge, Philip Kruger, Ricky from Ryan's Painting, Harry Ainsworth, Chris Corse, Ian Sustrick, Johnny Foxtrot, Richard Ward, John Butler, Sam Murphy, and Jun Yi, as well as Dr. EO, who supports me through PayPal. You guys are all very helpful, and you're all very kind and supporting me. It really helps me buying products like this at shows and things like that when I can get good prices for them. And also thanks to Luke Steele, who provided the music for this video. He made a couple songs for me, so I'm probably using one in the background here, I hope, because it's good music. And yeah, if you have any questions or comments, please post them in below. I will always do my best to answer them, and I'm always reading through there. If you have questions about other random things, also post them in there. I am always happy to help. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.